Our show wouldn't exist without you listening. But if you want more information on how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or just to stay in touch, go to flippinthelid.com. We'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Flippin' the Lid. By now, you know what we do here. We love to feature incredible individuals who are having crazy amounts of success and impact in this world. Ones who've built a level of significance through relationships and have understood how to navigate the world of connecting with other people. And so today we've got an incredible guest with us who is a self-proclaimed introvert who has worked significantly through his life to deepen his ability to deepen relationships and connections in such a valuable way that it's actually shaped so much of who he is today and how he moves through the world. It's a really fascinating individual because from serving in our military and protecting our country to being in oil and gas for over 18 years to now really leveraging more than anything the value of relationships, network, and connection as a self-proclaimed introvert. It shows what's possible in this world. And so I'm really excited to jump in. And Nick, I'm happy to have you here today, brother.
Thank you for having me. That was an awesome introduction. I love that. That makes me sound really, really cool.
Well, you know what, man? I just, when I get the vibe on somebody, I like to freestyle introductions based on who I see them to be and some of the things that I see them to jump out. But I also immediately like to reflect it back to you and say, that's kind of how I see you in our limited experience and interactions and what I was able to find. But man, I'd love to, if you could just describe who you are in your words.
Yeah, I feel that I'm like a regular guy deluxe, you know? I got the extra options in the package. But I'm a sure self-proclaimed introvert. I was shy and socially awkward, but you know, I powered through, found the way to. I felt like I was missing out on a lot of opportunities, so I found a way to get access to those opportunities. So every day, I'm trying to be the best version of myself, get a little bit better, and also help other people do the same. So I'm just a man out here taking it one day at a time, trying to shine a little light.
Yeah, well, you know, I love that you identify as an introvert. You integrate that even into the response. And, you know, this is a really short list of introverts, right? Bill Gates, Eleanor Roosevelt, Elon Musk, J.K. Rowling, Meryl Streep, Warren Buffett, Albert Einstein, right? So that's, by the way, not in any way a bad group to be included in. I see so much brilliance that rolls through those. And so I would be really fascinated. Could you help us understand how being an introvert changed your life growing up?
Oh, so growing up, it was really tough. It was kind of a struggle because, once again, I felt like I was like an outsider all the time. I felt like I was just missing out on so many things. Just not only, so one part of it was, you know, the dating, trying to talk to a girl, but a lot of people struggle with that. But just talking to anybody, just talking to anybody else, my peers. I used to pick out, my parents love to talk about this, I would pick out one person. And so when I was in, you know, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, I would pick out one person and I would only talk to that person and I wouldn't talk to anybody else. And as you can imagine, that limits your ability to, you know, connect and bond with other people. So you get to see people having a good time or things that you would like to do and take part in, and you're not included because you're not talking to anybody. And so that was definitely a struggle. And then as I got older, you know, I got a little group of people, the misfits, you know, all the other outside the main people, and it was, so I found a little home, but still we were all missing out on stuff together, but we were together. And then I really wanted to, you know, I wanted my life to mean something. I wanted to actually matter, in my view anyway. And so I said, I'm going to have to figure out a way to overcome this and be able to talk to people, at least have regular conversations like a normal person would have. And there's that saying, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time around. And I was thinking, okay, so who am I spending time around now? They're not doing anything. I need to figure out who these other people are, and then I need to figure out how to get to where they are. And then once I'm there, I have to engage and connect with them. And so that was a process, but I did it. And but yes, growing up, to answer your question, growing up was very challenging because I always like to say, I felt like an alien that didn't pay attention in their how to be human and blend in with human classes. And then they sent me anyway and said, oh, go down, you'll figure it out. And then I was like, oh, I should have paid attention. I don't know how this works.
How old were you when you started becoming aware of it?
I would say I was second grade, so maybe 7 or 8.
7 or 8?
Yeah.
And what allowed you to start to become aware of it? Were they thoughts? Were they observations? Were they feelings? Like what allowed you to start to sit in that moment and identify, oh, maybe I'm a little different?
Well, because one of the things was that my parents would say, he only talks to George. That's who he's going to talk to. And I remember when we moved to Colorado from Texas, there was a guy, Brendan. I only talked to him. But the teachers, I guess they didn't hear me talking to anyone. And things were different back then. They probably wouldn't do this these days, but they put me in the hearing impaired kids class because I guess they thought I was hearing impaired. They thought I was deaf. So I was in there, and there was Isaac, Hattie, and Ingrid, and myself. So there's 4 of us, and it was great because we didn't have to talk. We're just sitting in there, learning sign language, and it was, the small group of people. And so I definitely knew something's different here, but I'm enjoying it.
Hey.
But then when my mother found out, and then they put me back in general population with everybody else.
Okay, I got you.
Then I said, okay, there's something different. And I always felt like I was just outside, just always outside looking in. And so, I'd say about 7 or 8 years old.
That's interesting. I mean, even so, I actually have a hearing impaired daughter. She's got hearing impairment in both ears and wears hearing aids in both ears. And there is a literal disconnect that happens there. I also have a son who's on the autism spectrum, and it's a social neurological disorder that is difficult for connection, right? So we navigate these things in our world real time for our 7 and 9-year-old, both in our house, with our family, with interpersonal relationships at school. Yeah. But when they say, oh man, we're going to put you into a hearing impaired class, right? Was there any part of you that was like, oh, I can hear just fine? What was the thought and feeling other than you were allowed to escape to the small environment that probably allowed you to maintain energy better? But what was going through your thoughts and your minds other than oh, this is different? You knew you could hear.
Right. Yeah. So I was just, since once again, I wasn't talking to the teachers, so I wasn't going to voice and say, hey, I can hear. I just was like, well, they're taking me over here and I'm just going to be quiet. And apparently, they're the authority figure. They know what they're doing. I'll just go over here. And then, these guys are in here and no one's talking, and we can sign. And I was friends with those guys. So after that, and I was only in there for a week, but after that, I was friends with everybody in that class all the way up through high school.
Well, you remember their names now. I mean, it's very clear. I don't remember people from 7th or 3rd grade or 4th grade. There are very few names that I remember. So I appreciate the connection. There's also a lot of resonance even to just your story being an introvert that so many people I think can deeply identify with, and feeling alone from a very early age, feeling like they don't necessarily fit in, or maybe they're the one that's the strange one, and for a whole variety of different reasons. Yeah. You said in an answer a minute ago that you just really wanted to matter, or at least as that mattered to you, right? How you define that. I'd love to know what mattering means to you, and how did you start to go down that path of living into a life that you felt you mattered?
Right. That's a good question. When I said it, I said, he might circle back around to this. Yes. So the mattering, it was, I think it comes down to feeling like I was being seen and heard, and that I actually was, you always hear people talk about be the main character in your movie. And I didn't feel like I was the main character. I wanted to actually people to notice that I actually exist on this planet, that I'm here. And then once I started getting that for myself, I said, I want other people to feel that way, because I remember how it felt to not feel that way.
Right.
And so some simple thing that I like to do is, so for example, lunchtime at Chipotle when I'm getting my burrito made, I noticed that a lot of people treat the people behind the counter like they're food robots or something.
Dude,
right? Yeah. And so I will stop no matter how crowded it is. When I get to that first person they ask me, I say, hold on, how are you doing? How's your day? And then sometimes they'll just be like, fine. And then they want the order. And I go, no, let's talk. And then, the person behind me is always like, what's he doing?
Could you hurry up, Nick? Come on.
But I actually try to make them feel seen, and we'll have a short dialogue. And then once that's done, then I say, okay, now this is, what I would like to have today. Mm-hmm. And then that makes a huge difference. One time the manager came out and said, I saw what you did. Thank you very much. It means a lot to us that, people are engaging with us. And I've done that at Subway as well. And they'll remember you. So then when I come in, they go, oh, hey, this is the guy that says please and thank you and actually talks to us. And so back to the thing, the mattering, I wanted to be seen and heard and feel like I actually existed here. And so once I started feeling that, I wanted to help other people feel that. And then that also helps me feel like I matter because I'm mattering to that person at that moment.
I love that answer. And I'm really happy that you took it there because I genuinely believe in our human experience. We all want, seek, and desire for things, which is to feel safe, feel protected, feel seen and understood, and feel connected. And these last two don't happen unless the first two do, right? Because if someone doesn't feel safe or protected, what do? They tend to protect themselves. That's that armor you have to penetrate when you start to actually engage with someone and ask, how are you? And they're so conditioned to move on or to hide that they just go through the motions. But part of that is either their own internal trash that's causing them to feel uncomfortable or the conditioning externally of the world that has made them believe that they're not going to be seen and understood. And that happens to many people, whether they're an introvert or not. Yeah. So the way that you articulated that is beautiful, and the intention that you're putting into becoming the protector and connector in those spaces by making the effort and intention for someone to be seen, that is the essence of the human experience. I mean, is to be connected in a meaningful way that you can feel like you matter, at least to the person right in front of you. So beautifully integrated and answered. I'm really curious, do you find that you have a quicker read on people who are not 100% authentic?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I am misled where I'm like, oh, that seemed like an okay person. But then if I spend some more time around them. So one thing about introverts, the superpower, I think, is the power of observation. I think a lot of introverted people are really good at observing. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times if I can spot it easier if I'm not directly talking with them. If I'm in the room and I'm looking over, I can
truly
spot
as an observer.
Yeah, truly as an observer. But if I'm actually interacting, then I am susceptible to being charmed, just like anybody else. Be like, well, they seem like they could be this way, but they're pretty charming, so maybe they're not that. My gut is probably wrong here. So it's, as an observer, a true observer, yes, I think so. But when I'm interacting with people, sometimes I can be thrown.
You just hit on something that's so beautiful about the human experience as well, is the difference between the participant and the observer. In our own experience is real time, right? And how when you are seeking to be seen, understood, and connected, there's also an energetic desire for an energy exchange to exist in an interaction that may distort the reality of what feedback you would get if you were slightly removed.
Yes.
And how often does that happen for people, that they can see something clearly when it's not right in front of their nose, right? Even if it's only 2 feet removed, but when it's right here and we're feeling and receiving all these variables from people all the time, and we want to connect, right? I know that for many high performers, many who've suffered with different emotions that have come into place with shame and other pieces, but it's also true even sometimes for introverts, is that lots of people have learned to receive love and connection through validation and performance.
Yes.
How does that play into your experience?
Well, it plays in that, I like a good validation. I do. So I don't know if it's, I'm still trying to figure out like the when you talk about like say love languages, when people bring that up, hey, your love languages, and then I say, okay, the test said these things, but then when it's happening, I go, I don't know if that's what I needed. And so this is an ongoing conversation with my girlfriend who she'll say, what do you need? Tell me what you need. And I go, what do I need? And then, so I'm still trying to figure out. So I don't have the answer exactly. I know that sometimes that validation, and so for me, words of affirmation, say, hey, words of affirmation. But then when I'm getting words of affirmation,
they don't feel good.
Just like, I don't know, is that real? And then there's a part of me that says, are they saying that because they know that I want words of affirmation? Or is that an earned words? And so there's still that in my mind. So I don't have it all figured out, but
nobody does, brother. Nobody does. I appreciate your vulnerability to even give those examples. I mean, I will personally reflect back to you that it's interesting because mine supposedly is words of affirmation. But until I really clearly identified the trash from my past that was connected to shame and unpacked the intellectual and emotional narratives that created my belief systems in those moments, then when I actually got accolades, feedback, and words of affirmation, every time they made me feel like garbage until I reconciled and cleared out the stuff that was being filtered in how I was receiving the messages.
Yes.
And so I appreciate your vulnerability and even saying point blank, I'm real time talking about this with my girlfriend. And there are times that I question someone's intent around why, like, is this real? Do I trust it? Does it connect? And when you felt so much disconnection in periods of your life, it is very difficult sometimes to truly surrender to real connection and then be able to facilitate with what that is. So I would love to know, you talked earlier about, you just kind of went along with what the teacher said, right? It's like, I wasn't asked, so I didn't speak, and they went along this path, right? And so I followed it.
Yes.
At what point did you start to learn the power and importance of your own voice?
Let's see. When would that have been? I would say starting in late high school or early college, I would notice that sometimes people would, especially when I was around some of the more the side group people, and people wouldn't make decisions. They'd say, everyone wants to outsource everything. Like, well, what are we going to do? What's happening? And then I'd say, well, what if I just throw something out? Say, okay. My brother was visiting me, and I remember my freshman year, just got my roommate in college, and we were both just sitting there. Me and the roommate were both pretty quiet, and especially meeting new people. And then my brother said, okay, I'm going to take you guys out to lunch. And then it's like, I'm good. And then my roommate said, no, I don't need to go either. And he's like, yeah, no, that's not, come on, but we're going. And then we both went, and I thought about it, and I said, well, that's interesting. He just assumed, if you just assume that spot, then everyone just kind of goes, follows in it. And then so I did some experiments with that myself and just said, hey, here's what we're going to do. This is what's going to happen. And most of the time, people from my experience, if you just take that spot, a lot of people will like to defer to the person who wants to take that role. So once I started doing that, I said, oh, okay, this can apply to some other things as well. So then I started putting it into other parts of my life where I'd say, if there was somebody else that I felt knew what they were doing more than me and they wanted that spot, then a lot of times I'd be like, well, let's see what happens here. And then if they failed, then I'd say, okay, this person apparently doesn't know what they're doing, but now I'll try to take over, or we'll have a discussion. But if there was no clear leader at the beginning, then I'd say, okay, well, I'll hop up and do this. And so I guess hopefully that answers your question about the voice, where I just said, well, I'm just going to start doing this. And then I do it to myself also, just like I've been currently I'm doing the cold shower thing.
Yeah.
And so I get up every day and then I say, I'm standing outside, the cold water's running, and I say, I don't want to do this. And I go, then I also say, well, too bad, here we go. And then I get in. And so I feel if I can, keep the promises to myself and listen to my own voice, well, that should be before trying to do it with other people. I got to work on me first. And so if I'm doing this for me and doing the hard stuff and putting myself through those loops, then I can take responsibility for other people as well.
Yeah. What's your view on failure?
Let's see. My view on failure is I've had a lot of failure, but at the same time, I just keep going. And so there's lessons in there, and I don't always learn the lessons because people say, oh, well, as long as you learn, but I don't always learn, and I fail again in a similar way. And I go, okay, this is several times that I've done this same thing. I need to switch it up. So I think that you can learn a lot. To go a little deeper on this, I think it's very important, especially in the early stages, to fail because when I was really young, I decided to be a commodity futures trader. And I said, I'll just, I'll be making a lot of money doing these trades. And what happened was right out the gate, I was really successful. I just couldn't lose. And so I had this massive ego, and it's like, I am like king of the world. I can do whatever. I'm just a money machine. This is just what I do. Everyone else is stupid. I am the winner. And then I was humbled massively, and so if I would have had some failures early, then it would have taught me to kind of reel it in a little and play it safe. And so I think that the worst thing that happened was I didn't have any failures, and I just had straight success right out the gate.
Yeah.
And it came back and bit me really hard. So I think now looking at my life, all the failures have made me much stronger and given me a lot of perspective so that I can navigate a little bit better, and then also help other people when they say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I go, okay, you might want to look at these things if you're going to go down that path.
Yeah.
Because I have that experience. So failure gives me experience. I would prefer to have less failure, but I am grateful and thankful for the failure I had because it helps me navigate these days.
Yeah. But it didn't always feel that way in the moment of failure or when it was happening, right? The darkness, the doom, the destruction, the isolation, the doubt, everything starts to swirl, particularly when all you've ever felt is wind in your sails. Yeah. Right? I mean, when you're in a position where all of a sudden that changes, it can feel very abrupt and can be difficult to navigate the waters in those times. So yes, what I love is that you're extracting the lessons. What you're also very clearly aware of is that there are repeat patterns that exist in life, and sometimes a complete lack of consciousness as to what is the source that's creating them, right? That's one of the areas that we special in our world is really helping people identify and take out the singular thing that's keeping them stuck and showing up as the biggest problem in their life. Yeah. What I'm fascinated and curious about for you, because you're so vulnerable, you're so aware in where you're currently at, what lessons do you still have to learn that you're aware of?
That's good. I like that. So what I still have to learn is I know one thing that really stands out, because I was thinking about this the other night. I'm doing good in my romantic relationship, but I still have a lot of work to do because I had a lot of crazy romantic relationships before this current relationship. And so when I went into this, and you're always told not to do this, but I think everyone typically does it. When I went into this relationship, I brought a lot of preconceived stuff from previous relationships, and I had a lot of walls up, and I interpreted any actions from this relationship based off of, other relationships in the past. And I learned a lot to really unravel a lot of that. I've been doing a lot of observation of myself and work, and it's it's been really rewarding to just be able to shine some light on it and see this. And I know I still have a lot of work to do since I've seen how far I've come.
Yeah.
And I know I have more work to do in romantic relationships. So that's one thing. And then I would say also just learning about myself also, because so as of January 1st, I haven't had any alcohol this year. And I love alcohol. I love it. And so most of my adult life, I've just been drinking all the time just because I just really enjoy it. And then one day I was thinking, how would I be? I could always start drinking again, but what would it be like to do an experiment where I just stop and just meet this person that I am and see how I am in all the situations that I normally am where people are drinking and I'm usually drinking. What's it like to not be drinking and just be fully present and fully there? And so one thing that I used to do when I would do public speaking and I did some music stuff back in the day, and I would always be completely sober for those events whenever I was on stage, because I said, I want to be there for this. I don't want anything. And then it's like, why can't I do that with my life? Don't I want to just be there for my life? And I'm not knocking anyone who wants to, have a drink or whatever, but I just wanted to compare and contrast. And so I've been going out to all these functions just sober where I normally wouldn't be, and like, And so the observation, I'm still observing, but it's a little bit different. Yeah. And it's a little sharper, later in the evening than it would have been before. And it's really fascinating, the conversations that I'm having with people, and just to see myself, because I like to watch myself in that moment. And so these are the things I'm working on, learning more about myself, and also with the romantic relationships as well.
I appreciate your openness, brother. I really do. Like you're just answering questions and being willing to share and being open. I believe that true strength hides behind vulnerability, right? And you're able to put out there right now that you're like, no, there's some blocks that still exist. Oh, by the way, I was married with my wife for almost 14 years before I realized that the trash from my past was almost a singular thing that prevented me from having her and my kids in my life potentially. I created so much damage because I had anger buried so deep it couldn't even be barely excavated. And I would literally distort everything in my head. My wife would ask me something as simple as, hey, babe, what do you want to do with the kids this weekend? But my shame filter would cause me to hear it this way. Hey, you've not done enough to be a good husband and father here recently, so what are you going to do to make up for it this weekend? Walls, armor, defense, reaction. And I'd rattle off all the things that I would do because I was not the observer and the participant in my life real time to be able to catch myself in the moments by knowing how things move in my body, how they move in my world, and how I can move through them by, again, being real time present in my life to be able to catch when the moment happens. Now, instead of rattling it off, I can sit there in a position and say, hey, babe, I felt something that doesn't feel congruent with what you said, which tells me I probably didn't hear you correctly. Can you please restate it? And I'll try to hear it with a more neutral voice. And if for whatever reason I can't calm this energy, we can pause and revisit later. And so what I'll tell you, my friend, is on this journey, I'll just drop this here. If you're looking to become more the observer and participant and close that gap in your life, we'll have some more conversations. But I really appreciate the openness and dialogue with which you're already taking us down. What I'm really curious about is, when did you realize you loved street racing?
When I was just out there in the road one day, and I saw this other car, and then they were like you would see on TV or whatever. We're like, hey, you wanna do this? And yeah, let's go. And then and that started happening. It just one day I did it, and and I know that you're supposed to do it in a controlled environment out on the but this was not that. This was reckless and irresponsible, but it was so fun, the little adrenaline rush that kicks in, and it makes you really feel alive. I felt really alive and had a good time, and because I would get a car that can do stuff, but if you never do anything with it, then are you really using it? So And then I would spot other people on the highway or something, and they would have a performance vehicle. And I'd say, well, I know they want to do something as well, so let's have a little fun here and, play just for, a little while. And so I just started doing that, and it's really fun. So it doesn't happen, especially these days, not as often as it used to, but on occasion, it's really delightful, and we try to be as safe as possible. So far, no.
Does this date back to when you were 16 all the way through current adulthood, or is this like a fad that happened later? Like, where does this exist in your life?
Oh, this has been in the past, I would say, 5 years.
Dude, I love it. I love it. That's great. No, that's amazing. Dude, I always loved street racing too, and I like to go fast and drive cars and have the experience. And you'll learn more about my story. I know I'm going to be joining you on your show, but I definitely deeply appreciate the concept of sometimes having to push the limits of life almost to the edge of death to even have the glimpse of feeling alive.
Yeah.
Right. And it is something that is visceral, it's real, and it moves through people. So I love that. I'm curious, what do you drive?
This is so a lot of people are not going to be familiar with this. So this is a Volvo Polestar S60. So this particular car, there was only 2,300 made, and I think there's 220 in the United States, and I think in Colorado there's 3, I believe. And so this is their, at the time. So this was 2018 is the year of this car, and at the time this was their racing model, their fastest one that they did all these alterations to. And so it's this sleeper because they just say it's this Volvo, but
so a Volvo S60, nobody's like thinking of that rolling up. It's like it is a sleeper at the lights, man.
Yeah, but it has all these alterations, so you'd say there's something going on because I see all these different little things on it. But yes, people aren't expecting it to be what it is, and that makes it even more fun.
Yeah, I completely enjoy that. I've had some sleepers in my life. I'm curious, what's the fastest you've gotten? Obviously safe within the conditions, and nothing isn't going to infringe upon you. But what's the fastest you've gotten in a sanctioned street legal race?
Yes, on a sanctioned, controlled track. It's just been 120 for me. I have friends that have gone much faster than that in their vehicles, but for me, I'm like, okay, this is good.
It's moving.
And then I back it off.
And it's not about comparison. I think that I'm just curious, right? Everybody's got a different threshold.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful. What have been the greatest lessons you've learned from performing stand-up comedy?
The greatest lessons. Oh, this is good. So it's that, sometimes everything, you're in the flow and the audience is in the flow with you, and everything just goes exactly how you would picture it. And it's just like the dream set. And then sometimes nothing hits right and it's completely off. And, that I've even been booed at one point, which I thought was actually funny. So I learned to laugh at myself and not take myself too seriously and just enjoy the moment. So when it goes really well, I feel great and I love it. And when it goes badly, I also really like it because I'm like, oh, did you see how bad that was? And I learned to laugh at that as well, and just know, it's just another day, it passes, and it helped me with the stories. I say, I'll get a story out of this at least. Yeah. I'll get a story out of this. And so it's just putting yourself out there. And once again, in a lot of the comedy, I will be vulnerable and I'll say, hey, here's some of my personal business for you guys. And then however they react to it, they might like it, they might not. And it's almost like getting up and having therapy or something when you're up there. I'm just like, hey, here's what's happening. Here's what I thought. Here's some weird, horrible thing that I thought. What do you guys think about it?
Yeah.
And so it just let me just enjoy just being myself up there and not taking it too seriously. No matter how it goes, I apply that to my life as well, because sometimes you're like, wow, what a horrible day. And then you go, well, okay, that was a day, and we have some stories and we move on. So it just taught me to just get up there and do it. And it's not as necessarily good or as bad as anybody makes it out to be. It's just all, we do a lot of projecting. So I don't project as much into it. I just go out and have the experience, just be in the moment.
I think it's great. I was able to look at a couple of your bits before you and I jumped on. I don't always do deep research, but when I saw that you perform stand-up comedy, I was like, there's got to be something online. I got to see something. and so I appreciated a few of those stories, particularly the one where you got off the bus early, not at your stop, and that was quite enjoyable to listen to your internal dialogue and the options that could exist in front of you. Yes. And so we'll just leave it. We'll just leave it at that. But dude, I was dying on the floor laughing at that. So that was incredible. Yes. I want to bring it back to this concept of introverts versus extroverts. I think. Okay. I, for so many years, identified as an extrovert, and most people who meet me actually believe that, like, to their core, because I'm loud, I'm not shy, I get out there, I have charisma. But the older I got, the more I started to really pay attention to the energy exchange. And I can be a extroverted extrovert in certain environments with the right people in the right containers.
Yes.
And not have any drain or expenditure. In fact, it just fills my bucket. Yeah. And the complete opposite can be true. Right? I can be an extroverted introvert where I'm very aware of how the interactions are draining me and how and where I'm showing up. So for me, it's much more less about can you talk, are you social, are you not social, but much more about the natural energy flow that flows through each and every one of us, and ebbs and flows even for those that are introverts, extroverts, introverted extroverts, extroverted introverts, and all of the above.
Yes.
So what I'm curious about is, you obviously wrote a book on an introvert's guide to world domination.
Yes.
What I'm fascinated about is, how do you actually define introverts and extroverts in the way that you view the world and teach it? And how has the energy exchange actually come into that definition, an evolving definition of what this means to be in the world? Because I think today I'm more of an introvert that can be extroverted in moments than I ever wanted to accept before, but I need the solo time to recharge, and I neglected that for years in my life.
Yes. Yeah, that's an excellent question. I usually go by the standard definition where the introvert gets, wakes up full in the morning, and then the social interactions take a little bit of energy away, and then the extrovert wakes up empty, and then they have to go and interact to get filled up. And so that's what I usually go by. But then, yes, there's all kinds of different nuances in there. There's a lot of different shades of that. And I know that even for me, it changes depending on who I'm around. And so sometimes especially if I'm in a room full of if there's a room full of shy, introverted, and socially awkward people, then I'm like, I'm king in this room. Hey! And then I'll be the super just over the top, hey, everybody, what's going on? But if I'm in a room full of people that are, this happened. I went to a conference, and it was a very small, kind of like mastermind sort of thing. And everybody there was they were like over talking each other. So everyone wanted to show how much they knew about stuff. So they'd be like, well, this is the thing. And then someone else, and so they were battling on
one up, like, all over the place.
And so everyone was like cutting each other's sentences off, and they're just constantly, and I was just sitting there just watching. And I said, well, I would contribute, but everybody's trying so hard to be the one that's contributing to be seen. So I said, I'll just sit here. And then after a while, they kind of paused, and then someone said, wait a minute, Nick, what do you think? You haven't said anything this whole time. And then everyone was quiet, and then I got to say my spot. But I would say that, so the standard definitions for me, but I know that there's a lot of shades, and I know that it really depends on the environment that, just like I know that some people, if you were an expert on stamp collecting, let's say, but everywhere you go, no one's talking about stamp collecting, so you're just kind of quiet. But the moment someone did bring it up, you're like, no one's ever brought this up before. I have so much to say about stamp collecting. And then that person, that's their passion, then they might have never talked to anybody, but once that button is pressed on their passion, then all of a sudden they're not going to be drained. They're not going to run out of energy. They can talk for days on this one thing. So I guess it just depends on, there's a lot of little variances.
Well, I appreciate you going there and even in giving examples on yourself, because I think that's the reality of it is that there's so many definitions that the world has created for us to fit into, right? And even through the concept of, are you extroverted or introverted? It's like, well, I can be both, right? And so the whole looping point of the beginning part of not being seen and understood, feeling different or isolated, the reality of it is there's literally 1,000 shades of what this can look like for any individual, despite the normative definitions. So what I would love to hear is, how do you effectively teach people to hone into their more natural, authentic state, regardless of where on the spectrum it lies, and how to be able to navigate through those varying environments while maintaining the energy they need to continue to move themselves forward in the lives they want to build and create?
Oh, that's a nice question. Trying to see how I can answer, make sure that I actually hit the key points of that question. Okay, so when we start out, I want them to know, where they are on the where we're at now, and then where are we trying to get to, and then we'll try to start off with some simple things, because I know a lot of times people say, well, just go out there and start talking to people, and no, not going to do that. You need some structure. So my main starting point with people is I will just say, show up, find something that you think is interesting, some event, and just go there. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, I'm going to go and my goal is to talk to 2 people. I don't even start there. I say, just go. You don't have to talk to anybody. You just need to be in the room. So go and just be in the room. And it's a big crutch if you bring somebody with you. So, and I know a lot of people do it, and I've done it too. If you bring somebody, then you can so if it's you and I, we would just sit there and talk to each other and be like, hey, look at this. But if you...
Let's high five, Nick. Let's high five. It's such a great time together, bro.
Right. We could just have stayed home and just hung out together. But if you go by yourself, then it forces you to, now you don't have any safety net really. So you can go, you show up and you're just by yourself. And now you don't have to talk to anyone, just observe, just watch and observe and see how people are interacting, see what the layout is. Watch yourself, see how you are and what your body language, what you seem to be projecting. And no pressure. If someone comes and talks to you, fine. But I like to always start off at a really base level and just go. You don't have to, you're under no obligation to talk to anybody. Just be there in the room and watch. Watch everyone and watch yourself. And that's it. That's where we start. And then we start adding things onto that, maybe like what I call hunting introverts. One thing you'll do is you'll look for another person that looks how you feel. And so that person's going to be on the edges, maybe in the corner, and they'll probably have their phone out, acting like they're busy because they don't know what to do. And now you have first mover advantage. You're going to go and engage with that person because they need to be rescued, and you're going to go and rescue them. So you'll go up and talk to them, and there'll be another one. And so you're looking for people that are walking without purpose. They're just kind of moseying around, and then say, tell that person you've already started talking to, we're going to rescue this guy. And then grab that person, and now you have your 3. And then from there, a conversation could take place, because if it's just me and you, one of us might kind of drop off, and then we're just sitting there awkwardly. But if there's 3, usually between 3, you can keep it going. keep the conversation going. And then if you need to leave, or if you just think, I don't want to talk to these people anymore, if there's 3, you can easily just go, oh, I got to go to the snacks. And then you can just leave and they'll sit there and talk to each other. But if it's just you and one other person, it's hard to be like, okay, I know that you're in the middle of explaining this to me, but I don't really want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to go. So you want the 3. But that's how I always start everybody off. Just the initial thing, back to the initial point, is just showing up and just observing and watch them and watch yourself. And then from that, we build off of that.
Well, no, I mean, I appreciate it. It's even a very practical step, right? Just, again, identify someone else that might be feeling like you and bring them in closer, right? No different than you trying to be the protector and the connector for the server at Chipotle or any other place by engaging in a conversation. If you know that this is a chance to help someone else be seen and understood, and you can identify what that feeling of loneliness and isolation, particularly in a room full of people, can feel like, then how do you go bifurcate that situation for the individual, shorten the curve, and bring more of you together for more meaningful connection? So it's such practical steps, and I'm really hoping that anybody who listens, extroverted or introverted, who struggles in social environments, who struggles at networking events, who doesn't quite know how to go introduce who they are to people, listen to even just that singular tip, and I promise you, you'll be surrounded and more connected than you were before. What have you extracted and learned from the value of relationships and connections in your life? Because I know that's really what you teach now, beyond just how to move through the world as an introvert, is how to build an effective group of people who see and understand you, that you can lean on and leverage to create greater growth, amplification, scale, and impact in this world. So help us understand what that has meant to you, how that's been developed, and some of the most meaningful things that you've seen by moving people through your world and community.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I look at life as life is the relationships you have, at least in my opinion. So I figured the better relationships that I can have, then the better my life is going to be. And, you're one person away from changing your entire life. And so when you can connect with people, they usually know they have their own life as well, and they know a lot of other people. So anything that you want comes through those relationships and those connections. So and I talk about in the book of my love for sailboats and sailing. And I always tell people, whenever I meet someone new, and everyone I know knows, well, Nick loves sailing. He loves sailboats. So anytime anything comes up somewhere where there's going to be sailboats, I will usually get a call. Hey, did you want to come to this? Next month we're going to go sailing, and this. Did you want to go? And then, yes, I do. But if I didn't have those relationships and connections, then nobody would know that I was into that. Nobody would think to invite me out to that. And so anything that I'm trying to do, if I'm trying to, start a new business, or if I'm trying to figure out a better way to shovel snow in my driveway or something, there's always somebody, or to say that there's a leak, a pipe broke or something, somebody that I know knows somebody that knows exactly what to do for this particular thing. And so that really helps out the relationships. So for me, I love to travel. And there was a time where you've
been over 40 countries, right?
Yes.
I mean, you travel a lot.
I travel a lot.
Yeah,
and that's
beautiful.
Not like business. That's just me going places.
I love it.
And it started out with, I would travel to places where I didn't know anyone, and I'd say, let me build out a network here. I don't know anyone. I'm just going to just drop down and meet people. And the quick thing about that is I tell people, take a language class, a dance class, a cooking class, and if you can, do a homestay, stay with a local family. And if you do all those things, within a week or two, you will know a lot of people, and then you can narrow down exactly who you want to spend time with. And so that's a really quick way to build out a network. But when I travel, I've met so many people traveling and built these networks out that those people know people. So then when I say, I'm going to Bangladesh, does anybody know anyone in Bangladesh? And then somebody will say, oh yeah, my cousin lives in Bangladesh. He'll come and pick you up from the airport. And then so these relationships, making these connections, it it's everything. You have like this extended family and friends all over it can be all over the world, or if you're less ambitious, it could be, in your town, there's people that are helping you out, looking out for you. And, I do the same for them. And so a lot of times, and I don't know if this is too far off the subject, but I find that the maintaining the relationships, a lot of people start the relationship, but then they fall off on the maintaining it. Like my brother is horrible at this, and he was always saying, "You're always bringing me up as an example." And I'm like, because you need to get better. But because he'll meet people and they'll have this great connection, and then he will just disappear and I'll say, "What happened to that person?" "Oh, I don't know. I didn't talk to them." And they didn't. I said, "You have to be the one. You can't rely on people to follow up and get this going. You have to make it happen." And so the advice that I give people is every 3 months, quarterly, you make a list of everyone you should have talked to in the past 3 months that you didn't. And so go through all your email contacts and all your phone numbers in your phone. And then what I like to do is I'll just work my way down that list. It doesn't have to be all in one day, just when you get around to it. And I'll do either a phone call, get together with that person, or I might do a video on my phone so they can see me. They get all the all the sound, the visual and everything. And I just say, "How are you doing?" So I'm not pitching them on anything. I'm not asking them. I would just go, "Since I last saw you, your son had a broken arm. How's the broken arm? How's everything? How's the new baby? And you had problems with the HOA with your lawn. What's going on with that?" And then I'll say, "This is what's going on with me. I'm working on this. And I plan to travel to Texas to go on a fishing trip, next month." And then what that does is that keeps me top of mind with them. And so that relationship stays stronger so it's not like I call you 6 years later and then I'm like, "Hey, what's going on? Remember me?" And then you're thinking, what does he want? Why is he calling me out of the blue? But if I've been keeping in touch with you, and once again, I say, I put it on me. I don't say, "Well, they haven't called me." I do it. And then they know about me. They know what's going on. I know about them. And then if there's something that I find out about them that I could help out with, I'm going, "Oh, okay. Well, I can hook them up with this person and that would help them out." And then the same with me. If they know what I'm doing and there's something happens, like if I say, "I'm going to go sailing here," then they say, "Oh, well, there's this other sailing thing. Maybe Nick would be interested." So we're constantly updated. So I guess to put a bow on it, it's the relationships. I try to get them going and I try to maintain them because I do feel like I matter. I matter to them, and I feel like I matter to myself when all these relationships are going smoothly. And they're sometimes they're not always super smooth, but hey, I'm still there. They still are. There's that exchange, and so I try to actually participate in the world, and I show other people that. So like in the book, I talk about upgrading your life and lifestyle, and through your relationships, that's where everything comes through your relationships. If you wanted a better job, you'll get that better job through your relationships. You don't have to just go cold. Everything is through your relationships.
Yeah. No, I think that's powerful. I'd love to challenge and pivot a shift of words for you in one thing you said, if that's okay. You said in the last 3 months, who should you have called? I have a resistance to the word should because it's a shame-based word, because it implies that whatever you're doing or whatever you've done or whoever you are, whoever you're doing or around isn't good enough, right? Yeah. And so what I would just ask is, in the facilitation of your own world, relate it more towards could or would, because particularly for introverts who struggle to outreach and actually put themselves in that position, the shame and the blame creates an energy cycle that's harder to escape. Whereas sometimes we can just accept, look, maybe I got my ass kicked last quarter. Maybe the last 3 months, my family needed all my attention and I couldn't reach out to them, but who could I or would I have reached out to had I put the intention and created the time and the rhythm to do so? Because all I heard from you is awareness and intention. Yeah. So the subtle nuance was, I just would love to have everyone here. Like, sometimes you're not going to be able to reach out and keep connection with everyone in your life every 3, 6, 9, or even 12 months. Life happens, and give yourself empathy and grace in that as well. But I love what you're teaching, which is ownership, leadership, creating protection and connection through the ways that we put ourselves into uncomfortable positions to connect more deeply with ourselves and with others.
Yes.
So I really appreciate that. I've got one more question for you, and then I'd love to get us closer to the wrap because I know we're shorter on time. Okay. You're somebody that seems to have moved through the world putting yourself intentionally into uncomfortable positions. Yes. You're clear and aware of when you're an observer and when you're a participant and the impact of different environments on your life. You've articulated that so clearly. You also stated, though, that your biggest problem in life or business is recognizing and trusting your gut instincts. Tell me how and where that's impacted you in your life and business, because from the outside, for many who may not know or see or read or anything beyond, right, you present and come across as this guy that's just learned to trust his gut and move, yes. Yet you self-identify with that not being congruent.
Yes, my gut has seemed to have betrayed me quite a few times where I'm like, okay, the gut's saying do this, let's do it. And then it's like, no, what? What happened? No. And then other times where I'm like, well, the gut's saying no. And then I'm like, oh, I should have. So it's been wrong in some like pretty big deal moments. And so now I'm like, but once again, back to if I'm the participant, then a lot of times sometimes it'll be like, well, maybe this, and then it's overridden by whatever, but
whatever feedback you're getting that's distorting whatever's right in front of you.
Yes. But usually as the observer, it's correct, but not all the time. Sometimes I am wrong there too, just because there's a certain outcome that I would really like, and then I just view everything through that filter where I'm just like, oh, well, I want it to be this way, so everything that I see and hear, I'm seeing and hearing all the stuff that I want that's going to drive
towards the outcome that you desire, right? Which starts to be attachment, which starts to put you into a place where you can't be as real in the moment and present as the participant as well. So I am grateful that you articulated that so openly. This is something that truly so many people struggle with. I've struggled with. Sometimes it's hard to even know what is your own authentic voice, because the patterns of the trash from our past can make us believe that our father's voices, our grandparents' voices, our mother's voices, our boss's voices can be our voice, right? We can go along the path of where our teachers guide us and not even challenge or ask questions, or we start to tune into what feels right for us. I'd love to know, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
Before that, one thing I'd like to add on that last
please,
was it reminded me of this. There's this relationship that I had many years ago. It was probably 15 years ago, and the funny thing about it was I had a journal. I was really journaling a lot at that time, and I met this beautiful girl, and I remember in the journal it said, "Leave her alone. Do not talk to this girl. She is not good for me at all. It's great like this, but she's going to be a bad fit. We do not match." And I said that like for a couple of weeks in there. I wrote that, and then next thing you know, I'm dating her, and it was a horrible relationship. And it went for a while, though. I dated her for a while, and then I told everyone, it's like, look, in my journal, I had said, don't do this. I clearly stated it out, and I have all the reasons and everything, and somehow I ended up doing it. So, yes, there was a disconnect in there.
And by the way, again, thank you for being open and sharing that, because this happens to every single human being, right? Every single person who's listening has been in a position where something has happened like that. There's been an expectation or attachment or focus on an outcome that's removed them from the present or truly not allowed them to guide the path that they want for themselves.
Right.
And so I appreciate you expanding on that. Anything you want to leave folks with, and make sure to include where they can find you as well, my friend.
All right. So the closing thoughts are, once again, show up. That's the most important thing. People always say, what's the most important thing? Show up, because nothing happens if you don't show up. That if you want to start anything new or be a new version of yourself, whatever it is, you got to show up. And so you can find more about me at connectedintrovert.com. And then the book, An Introvert's Guide to World Domination, is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Nick Shelton, and Instagram, Connected Introvert.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Nick, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit better, my friend. And for everyone else who just watched this episode, what Nick just showed you is that whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you can feel isolated alone. You can be guided through life without intention until you start to realize the power of your voice and influence, not only for yourself, but the ability to influence the rooms around you. How you can become the protector and the connector, the leader in each space. And regardless of whatever you believe is possible for whatever you've experienced to date with the human connection, it can go deeper. It requires you to take a look inside and really identify the things that have been keeping you stuck in those ways, and to be honest with yourself as you show up in the world to know, are you aware and intentional with the things that you're still learning, the things you are still working through to become the best version of you. Nick wants everyone to be the best versions of themselves, and he wants to show the power of connection and relationships and the ripple effect it can have in your life and the lives of everyone around you. But what does it require you to do? Flip open your lid and scan your can. What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.